Also, I forgot to mention, if you find the actual rendering of that in geometry a little too heavy, you can go ahead and switch that to dots. Um, I have a pretty fast machine here, and I'm usually pretty cool with that kind of stuff. All right, so what is next on our? Oh, I forgot to mention a drag. But okay, so the space warp is in there. So what is next? What is next? Oh, let's go back to the video. So the skull and crossbones we covered. This is just a render of the three special elements, four special elements that I have in here so far, which of course is the tracer rounds, the skull and crossbones, the fallen shells, and the fume files. I always render these things together so I can get a feel of the final or almost final effect. Alright, so what do we have next? This is probably just a rendering with a, again, it's still the shade cell, so I can get the feel of what it will look like with the actual robot doing it. Again, this is before all the animation was fixed with the robot here. And let me see if I can capture that real quick. I want to show you why these. Okay, good. This actually grabs it. Why this way of doing motion blur is kind of faulty. It's because see this shell right here specifically, like it isn't moving in that direction. See the blur on it is going diagonal. It's even more than 45 degrees, and it's like a 60. So what it's doing is adding motion blur. It's over adding motion blur to the camera view of it. That's really hard to say. Like the camera is not rotating as fast as the blur is giving it credit for. The shell is actually moving vertical more, which means that the blur would be more vertical. So it's a little generic, this rendering. So okay, blah blah blah. Here's where I finally added smoke to the fume renders. Okay, we got smoke covered. Again, an all-out render with the smoke included this time. Maybe this is something we can cover briefly. The smoke I made white, and I added lights to the smoke itself, so that it will be able to. Well, I forget what that effect is called. I only know how to do things usually. I don't know what they're called. If I open this up, it's under your illumination tab. Multi-scattering. See the lights that are selected. Now, the smoke and fire will feed off of that and multi-scatter the light for volumetric rendering. Light scattering tends to eat up more processing power because, again, it's volumetric rendering, which means that it's not just lighting up a 2D object as it's seen. Like, it's not working with polygons, so to speak, or facets. It's working with voxels, which can be seen in any direction. Which is why if I played the animation now while it's moving, it will update as I move around it. It's not just facing one direction. So with the light scattering, um, that's partially the problem why I had to make the full container for the both of the super sprays, because they start stepping on one another when you render it, and it leaves those bizarre interlaced looking artifacts in your render, and you don't want that. Okay, so we got fume, the lighting covered there. All play. So okay, the smoke we brought in, scattering. This is scattering and the tracer rounds. Again, I'm trying to get the feel of the effect. Um, Trying a different camera movement. Didn't work. Also, if you notice, look at the skulls in this one. They're not always looking at the cameras because I forgot to change the what the skulls were looking at. Say that's I think that's camera two, that shot. But the skulls, when you set up a facing shape instance or shape type, they have to be looking at a camera specifically. And what I did is I forgot to aim it at camera two because I was just rendering with camera one. So as you see, they seem to pop in and out there because they're only looking at camera two for a very short second there because they're constantly aiming at camera one. So what we're seeing is camera one and camera two crossing the same or almost the same paths or directions, and that's why we get to see it for that short amount of time. Okay, so what's next? This one I rendered actually at 1280, 720. I think this was my last ditch effort to get the shade cell to work. It didn't work very well, especially when it came to the fire, because the fire was more realistic, and the now look at that. I added the ground smoke at this point too, um, but I didn't like the effect. So I think this was my last ditch effort into getting shade cell to work, and it just wasn't working for me. I'm gonna go back a video because I don't know if yeah, I guess I put in the ground smoke at that point, which we'll cover now.